Hey,
Hey, what y'all doing?
We're just playing.
goofing around.
Okay, all right, good stuff.
He and I talked a little before, Allison, about getting your thoughts. I think some on sort of the product and vendor and fintech side of the world, surely, and you're the expert there. But you do a lot with the bank side as well and helping them, sort of the extensibility of marketing, I
Right.
guess.
Hmm.
So, and I mean, that's been a problem for years. I mean,
Right.
we've all experienced it. And I think the banks are pretty open about the fact that it's not their strong suit. I mean, historically, they've had a pretty captive geographic audience, and geographies are damn sure changing, right? So, how do we help them with that better? That's a great topic. Going to kick us off.
Yeah, no, for sure. You're right. I think banks, community banks especially, are pretty open that their marketing groups have typically been corporate communications or doing things in the branches, and that is marketing. But it is a different kind of marketing than capturing customers digitally or kind of breaking through the noise. So yeah, actually a big part of what our team does is the marketing on behalf of our customers, right? And three of us have talked for a long time about how do we make that decision smaller
Mhm.
for the bank, right? And you all use data and we all use some of the marketing strategy pieces, but just how can we make it easier? Because whatever it is they're trying to do is hard. And so how can we make that decision smaller? Data like from FedFis, and then we provide, the marketing strategy. And it's not just the ideas, it's everything from how much you need to spend on paid media to what your messaging and positioning is. And we like to think it's better than, say, calling up an agency because we're familiar with the product. We're not going to give you a bunch of ideas that you can't actually do. We're also familiar with bank budgets, right? And the worst thing you can do is call an agency in New York and they give you some amazing stuff and you show your board, but it's $1 billion. And that's just so disheartening. So I think it's good marketing, but it's pretty practical. It's pretty based in what the bank wants to do and then what they're going to be capable of doing technologically.
Well, it's pretty clear to everybody. There's tons of different offerings, right? With everybody's got their different pitch. On the actual products, once you've got somebody engaged, account opening probably being that first piece.
Yeah.
Prior to that, it's black magic, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do we use the
Sure.
interwebs
Yeah.
to get people to know our name?
So it is not magic. We follow the same process for our bank customers as we do for our own brand, right? Which I think is important because we should be the first to fall if something doesn't work. So the first step is building awareness, which sounds easy to do, but when I'm biased towards niche audiences, but if you're not trying to attract the entire United States, you're trying to attract, you know, ranchers who live in West Texas. There are very easy ways to find them. Just like when a bank wants to find out what the FinTech stack is, there's easy ways to find them with your data. So we have the data to say, listen, these are where ranchers in West Texas are, of course, geographically, but also where they are digitally. What websites do they go to? What do they subscribe to? How digitally savvy they are, which is an important one because everyone makes a misassumption there. Oh, they're not going to be digitally savvy. They're not going to be, this and that. I mean, my grandmother uses an iPhone. So you identify you create the awareness with a specific group, right? And because you've got that segment and you know what matters to them, not because you Google it, but because you talk to them, right? One of the biggest things in marketing is remembering that you are not the target market. I am not a West Texas rancher. I can't Google my way to that knowledge. You have to go out and you have to talk to them. We do a tremendous amount of first person research, right? It's not kind of like y'all, it's not surveys that we base this off of. It's actually real stuff. And that doesn't make me an expert rancher, but it does make me interested. It does help me to understand what's important to them. And once you've got the segment and the affinity, you can get the awareness. Once you have the awareness, you can create the content or whatever it is that resonates with them. That's pretty easy to do because you know everything about them, how they like to be spoken to, where they like to, be spoken to. You have all of that information. So then you've got content. that's quality content, that you're not trying to sell anything, it's just informative content, that makes them, that's the attraction piece, right? So that gets them into, now notice I haven't talked about product yet. So a lot of it is data, a lot of it is conversation, a lot of it is the discipline, again, to remember we're not the target market, but also to gently inform the banks. They also don't know the customers maybe as well as they think they do, right? Having a couple examples of a teller conversation is helpful, but that is not a trend. Those are 3 data points. That is not a trend, right? So going and creating a marketing plan based on our customers tell us they love us and they come here because they get personal service. Okay. But that's also the same answer you would get at every single other bank, right? And so you've got to get deeper.
I like what you said about, content. We do a lot of the same of just trying. I mean, that's what we're doing right now, both of us, trying to be informative and helpful, tell them what we're seeing. And over time you get, I actually think a little bit more of a personal touch point, right? They're going to know all of us. If somebody that didn't know us before watched this, hopefully we've provided some good value. And so somebody knows that we know what we're talking about and we're also helpful to the ecosystem. Then if we come back and say, hey, check it out, we got a cool product, we'd say, hey, I know those folks, And I think with banks particularly, it's very much skipping that first step, which is the howdy, the introduction, providing everybody a little bit of value. So you've got a positive balance when you go to ask for something, which is, hey, look at my cool product.
Exactly. And you mentioned kind of push and pull. And one of the things I've found that makes it easier for a bank or anyone, any brand to break through the noise is everyone out there is pushing. So there's push and there's pull when it comes to marketing strategy. And if everyone around you is pushing, it's kind of like the, zig when they zag, pull, right? And so specific examples of that are, like, just for example, we don't do massive paid advertising, nor do we ever recommend that our customers do. We don't actually use push. We use pull. We have one social channel. And that's the only one that we use, right? We happen to use LinkedIn, but we use a pull method. So we don't blast things out. When we publish things to certain groups. Like when you all are responding to stuff, it's not that everybody saw that message. It's just that you all, we think, would be interested in that. So it's a pull to us as opposed to just pushing things out, because that's where the noise comes from.
That's perfect. Yeah, same thing we do. I think you see it a lot. We talk about targeted marketing versus, the shotgun blast, or I guess brand awareness versus lead gen would be another way to look at that. And we're similar to you. I like being really targeted in the engagement. I mean, even if you thought about it a little more old school, it's trade shows or things of that nature, and it's you.
Could be. I have some thoughts on trade shows.
I love to hear
it. But you're right on the targeted marketing. The thing I like to talk about there is it's not just the brand that does the targeting. People also, because everyone is a consumer. You're a consumer of content, you're a consumer of data, you're a consumer of, feelings. So everyone's a consumer. So consumers target you. So you have to, as a brand or as a bank, be easily targetable. And how you do that is by being clear about what you're about to that audience. You have to take every step to be a worthy target for the consumers that are in the market looking at it. It's not like they can't find you on the internet. So you've got to sort of think about it both ways.
That was really good.
So I'm going to take a little hard time here and get some help. Free advice, right?
You didn't know you were advising today.
You do what you can, right? I get asked all the time by people, so tell me what your company does. And the truth, you're like, give me one sentence answer, And
the elevator pitch is always tough.
Hell if I know what we do. I mean, some people think we're a data company, and that doesn't mean anything to anybody anymore. And I like to think that we're a strategy company, but I don't know if I can explain that in one sentence or less. You know us pretty well. What are we?
A great question. I also have thoughts about elevator pitches, because think about when you're in an elevator, that's the most awkward conversation you ever have in your life. Like, am I supposed to be talking? Should I make eye contact? Then you get like hot and sweaty. But yeah, the whole elevator pitch thing is odd to me. But I think, for you all, Dave, it's not a sentence. It's a phrase that you would expand upon, because we're similar in that we're not selling t-shirts to the mass market. There's certain people that are going to get it, and there's certain people that aren't, and that's okay. For me, the phrase with FedFis is your truth in banking. Mm-hmm. Like we're truth in banking. That's a big statement, because that's going to make the person be like, well, what is that? Because if you say strategy or data, or we're a technology company, you're not differentiating yourselves, right? So FedFis is truth in banking. Well, what the hell do you mean by that? And then you go from there. I forgot to mention industry events. We do not do industry events. That is our strategy. Industry events would be sort of pushing ourselves. We're not going to be for everybody, and we're okay with that. The people that we are good matches with are doing a good job finding us, and we're finding them. So it's
great.
Yeah,
I feel the same. I love your topic of thinking, and I think it ties well into trade shows and industry events. What makes me think of is damn RFPs.
Oh,
right?
Sure.
It's the same
right.
thing. I've had multiple spots in my life where it's like, we're just not going to respond. And I've actually been hearing that more and more from bankers. It's, you would imagine from my side, bankers ask me my thoughts on if they should do an RFP. And I mean, it's all I can do not to scream like, nah.
Right. A lot of vendors too.
But all the badass vendors, most of the badass vendors will not respond. Are you seeing that too? Or they want to be informing the process of creation, right? They don't want to get the cold one.
Yeah. The cold ones are tough. They do want to be informing the process, but the challenge there is you're still informing a bad process.
Right.
You're putting good inputs into a bad process. So
process.
Yeah. Where we've, and this is, and y'all know Jeffrey, our CEO, where we've kind of been lately is when we get an RFP, we've been using that as an opportunity to actually pivot the conversation. Like we will fill the form out, of course, but we use it as an opportunity to have an audience to talk about something completely different than what they're asking for in the RFP. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but a lot of times it's like, you're asking about this, but based on our research, we really think you should be asking about that. Could we talk about that? Like we may not win this and we're kind of okay with that, but I'd really like to talk to you about this burning thing over here. And a lot of times, it's worked.
Yeah, it's a pretty damn frustrating process. And I've seen a lot of, people that are just, their hair's on fire. They're really rolling and they're not going to take time to do. Like I love what you said there.
You have a lot of
it's an antiquated process that doesn't reveal what it's supposed to. Right. And the questions are designed to where for a particular vendor, let's just be out there and be honest about it, right?
Yeah, you're going to fit in a box.
Don't talk about these cool things that you do because we want to ask you about the things that make you look bad so that this guy wins.
Right. When I think that RFPs reveal, I think they were intended to reveal a lot about the vendor, but I think they actually end up revealing more about the bank.
Yes.
Right. And it's sort of like the personal ad for the bank. Right. And so it's just like, and we have conversations like that. Sometimes it's also connected going back to marketing and marketing strategy, which is, what you intake a lot of times is what you output. So to Dave's point, if you're not asking those kind of really insightful questions or giving space for that conversation, you're probably not doing the same for your customer set. I would love for more banks to start going out in the social spaces and talking about what they need and should demand from vendors. Mm-hmm. Like we certainly read Banks to Riot Act, but where are the banks saying, you know what? I'm going to pound the table because this is what I want from my vendors. And if you don't give me this, I'm not going to take whatever our version of an RFP is. I want them to hold us to that same fire, and we'll get better by challenging each other. Right now, it's a little lopsided. I would love it. I would love it if a bank started challenging the vendor process.
Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with NYMBUS Labs. I've seen it. I know you and we haven't specifically talked about it yet, right? But I've seen it, and I've been kind of the fly on the wall watching the marketing, right, and piecing it together. But I want to hear it from you.
Okay. It is absolutely my favorite thing that we do. So it's such a fun group. So literally the whole purpose of NYMBUS Labs is to come up with niche bank concepts. And whether it's meeting with a bank and going from a blank sheet of paper, we have 30 right now that we have created and they're pre-architected. So it's not just an art project, it's actually pre-architected. And just coming up with those to inspire banks about that kind of better state we talked about, right? Because it's one thing to kind of tell them, oh, we've got this, we've got that, but being able to be like, no, here's a whole bank. And in some cases, and here are the 10,000 people that have already signed up, like our newlywed bank, like Hitch, that just makes that decision so much smaller, right? And it just, you can just see the relief. It's like, it's got the name, it's got the messaging, it's got all of the things with it. It even has people that have raised their hands. And what's so cool about it is once that defensiveness, like you mentioned, goes down, they start coming up with things that we've never even thought of, right? With the niche banks. And it's cool. It's so cool. But the other thing with labs is it is from the end user's perspective, right? So that is the group that does the marketing on behalf of the banks, but everything that we do and the things you see that we send out, that's with the end consumer in mind.
Let me blow my whistle here. This is for the back of timeout, right?
Yeah.
Okay, what the hell's he talking about, right? So you hear a lot about sponsor banks and you know, or direct banks, and everybody talks about it. We talk about it constantly. And the reason this conversation comes up, and again, back to data, right? Go look at who the people in the top 1 percentile of every earnings category is, and you'll find unique characteristics. Go look at their balance sheet, income statement, asset mix, how they're doing what they're doing. And you're going to see all these areas that they're just off the charts. And that's what clues you into, aha, they're doing something different. And then as you dig into it, you're going to find out they're a sponsor bank for a FinTech. Meaning
it's niches
FinTech,
and banking as a service.
Yeah, because I put this down real simplified, that these FinTechs perform a banking function and they need to have a bank to perform those functions through. So they run these accounts through the bank or cards through a bank or loans or whatever. And that bank doesn't really have, you still have your customers, you still do your daily banking, but you're helping a FinTech perform functions on the side for whatever it is they do. What she's talking about, and this is the question I get all the time from bankers, that, man, we're really thinking about doing this sponsor bank thing, but our boards ask the same question. How do we get the FinTechs? How do I know that if I set this bank up to do this, I'll get them? And what she's talking about is delivering the end zone to you first.
I love it. It's almost like sponsoring yourself, if you think about it.
Exactly. That is exactly right. It is like sponsoring yourself. I'm going to steal that because BAS is, everyone has different definitions, but I think it is a BAS to niche and niche to BAS. I mean, those are the motions, but yeah, I mean, sponsor yourself, right? The whole reason why people want to go out and partner with FinTechs is to get more modern and to not have, all the legacy baggage. Selfish plug with NYMBUS, you run on a parallel core, so you don't have to worry about that piece of it, right? And so, yeah, it is like sponsoring yourself. But I think BAS is one of the fastest ways to get into niche banking, and vice versa.
And it's
the most
journeys.
Exciting stuff there is.
But it's journeys, and I think everybody's missing right now. If you looked at all the FinTechs, right, the Chimes, all the others, and we look at them on our list, and we actually look at them visually, all the logos, and I'm like, they're all little fractional pieces. They're all little micro journeys. And so if you went into, anybody's phone, you're going to find their favorite 4, 6, or 8 journeys that make up their niche life. Right. And so I think it's a really cool concept. It's the unbundling of banking that's going on right now. Right. We've been building super apps for 25 years.
Opposite of a super app.
We're unbundling right now.
A super app.
And I think it's an unpopular narrative, or maybe it's a little early, Allison, but I think, we're hearing about super apps on the FinTech side. And I actually would argue the FinTechs are 10 years behind what we've been doing here.
Looking at the math, we're going to be proven right on this one, that the super app is not the direction.
It will be someday, but not right now.
I mean, it's the reason that you have Coinbase on your phone and you've got Ameritrade on there and you've got, 50 other things that you play with. Part of this is entertainment, and then part of this is I prefer this particular interface, or I dig what they're doing there, or it was just the easiest way to get going. But having the more and more things people can do in one app, I just don't think that's the way that you're ever going to get I mean,
Ever is a strong
how
word.
do you do everything?
Ever is a strong word. First of all, I would never bet against y'all's predictions. So just for the record. But if, in my view, if super apps were the thing, then Apple would be designing our iPhone to have one gigantic app screen. I think multiple apps for multiple things is not bad, because you feel seen and heard by a Chime or by, whatever your different apps are. And Dave, you're right. Like, if there's one little thing that you like, you're going to use it. How inefficient and expensive to try to get everybody's little thing into one. Everyone's a snowflake, right? Or wants to be a snowflake. And so you can actually ride that all the way to the end zone, or whatever sports knowledge you want to use, throw it to the end zone, because the people wanting to be a snowflake, that's what niches are, right? And so everyone wants to feel that way. So banking can actually make people feel like snowflakes.
It's great.
My final thought is, for folks that are watching, is one of the things that we've come to value in our relationship with you all, which predates NYMBUS, is just always coming to us, and what Jeffrey would say is telling us when we have mustard on our face. And this kind of goes back to the truth in banking. And I think if we're all, whether it's our colleagues in the space or someone else, just being honest and kind of sharing that last 2% with each other, because a better industry makes us better vendors. And, it's okay to reach out to someone who may work at a competitor or what have you, and be like, hey, I've been noticing this, and just, have you guys thought about this? And I do that all the time. And a lot of the times people are like, what the heck? Why are you calling me? And it's not because I have the answer, but again, it's that outside perspective. Like, have you thought about this? And I want them to do the same for us, and just keep sharing, keep kind of telling those truths. And I think that'll take us farther than any one piece of technology can.
That's awesome.
It is.
I think it's great. And we all need it, right? And we're seeing it with Bankers Helping Bankers, with the bankers really coming together.
Yep.
I'm seeing the associations really coming together. I love it. Shout out from Allison on calling for the vendors to come together, man.
Yeah, do it. Let's do it. Vendors helping vendors.
There you go.
Maybe that sounds more like a support group than what you guys are doing, but I'll think of a better name. So, all right. Thank y'all.
Thanks so much.
Take it easy. Thanks for riding with us.
Bye.